Food is more than just what's on our plate. It's the places where it's grown, it's the people who grow it, and so much more. Join me, Janice Person, your host, on Grounded by the Farm every other week as we talk about the foods we love. Hello. In this latest episode, we're going to be doing things a little bit differently now that we're beginning to figure out this new system of doing things remotely. The interview is pretty self-contained. It includes the introduction as I do it with the farmer on the line, rather than me coming back at the end of things and trying to sum it up. The other change is really more around the website, groundedbythefarm.com, and it will probably make it more exciting for you to be a subscriber there for our emails. We anticipate being able to put up a bit more information on the website, not as much directly to the episodes that are upcoming, like we were doing with video tours and things along that line, but catching up with various farmers who we've already talked to, other farmers that we have on our list for the future, getting content that may not be necessarily fully podcastable, but might be really interesting to others who are excited about this space of food and farming. So you may want to go ahead and head over there and get signed up. All right, here goes the latest episode. Hey everybody, it's exciting to be back on Grounded by the Farm, and this week as I was looking at topics for us to talk about, I kept looking at how I personally was having to look at food differently and how I was planning for my meals, how I was thinking about what I needed to have in the house instead of going out to the grocery store every day or two or stopping by all these restaurants. I was trying to think about how do I want to do that for a week or maybe 2 weeks. That reminded me of being out in what I call the middle of nowhere in the Mississippi Delta. And the middle of nowhere leads me directly to the person who's our guest. Because when I first met Val, I seriously had never thought about going to North Dakota. A few years later, Val Wagner shamed me because I had not had such a thing. We met on Twitter, right, Val?
Yes, we did.
And you and your husband, Mark, and your beautiful boys, there's 4 of them.
There's always a lot going on in the household, that's for sure.
But what do you guys grow? So you have red cattle.
We have Red Angus cattle. They're a Simmental Red Angus cross. And then we also grow corn and soybeans and wheat, and then alfalfa or grass for our cows to eat.
Yep.
So most of what we grow are all things that we can consume here on the farm ourselves or eat ourselves, and then if we don't eat it, then our cows do. So that's kind of, we try to make sure we're our own ecosystem if we have to be.
Yeah. My niece joined you guys up there this year.
She was a blast.
She has never been living in a place like that, and she's an introvert and she loved it. And I'm an extrovert, and I keep thinking, this is going to make me insane.
Yes. Well, and it was funny while she was here as well, our weather was all over the place. We've had, much like most of the country, we've had some ups and downs, and it's been kind of rough the last, 12 months or so weather-wise. Yeah. And she may have been here for only 10 weeks, but I think she saw everything that we could possibly have had for weather.
I think you threw it all at her.
Yeah, definitely.
I did one of those silly things, and I just saw it again on Facebook this week, like, what states have you been to? Mike Haley actually just did it today, I think. And the average person's only been to 8. I did that list, and there were like 4 or 5 states I hadn't been to. And you took it kind of personally.
Well, I just thought, why was North Dakota not one of the places you had been to? I mean, not only did my boys talk to you regularly whenever we would be visiting on the phone or whatever it may be, but I was like, I knew for a fact you had flown over us plenty of times, so I thought, why not stop for a minute and see what we had to offer? Plus, I also knew that there was so much more here than most people even ever imagined, just because we do, North Dakota kind of gets the bad rap of being kind of a flat land of nothingness, and we do have some topography. I mean, not a whole lot, but we also have just a lot of really cool things to experience. And the people here are the best. So,
but what does it look like? I mean, the part where you live, to me, it's kind of rolling hills, maybe prairie. There's some hills not far from you, at least.
There's some hills. We're at what we consider the base of the hills. So there's some hills not far from us, but nobody else would ever consider them hills. I mean, outside of North Dakota, because we're still talking, everything here is really pretty flat. And one of the things that, when I've taken my boys to other states, one of the things that have always amazed them is they just assume that trees grow in rows because the trees in North Dakota have all been planted.
For windbreaks.
Yes.
And things, yeah.
And so anytime we've gone to, I was born in Wisconsin, so my family is there, and we've traveled back there a couple different times, and the boys are just amazed that these trees are just all over the place, and how do they ever see anything or do anything when all these trees are just all over? And it's like, that's how they occur naturally. Like in North Dakota, we don't have that. And so sometimes it's hard for people to understand that when we talk about wide open spaces, this is what they mean. Like, we are wide open spaces.
I remember going to college in Oklahoma and having not had that environment before myself. I suddenly was wide open. And for me, at first, it made me feel a little bit vulnerable because I'm used to having trees and buildings and all these things around me. And suddenly you can see for so far that there's not another car on the road or whatever it is. So for me, at first, it made me feel really vulnerable. But I have to say, the sunsets do seem to last longer when you don't have a lot of stuff between you and the horizons. There are incredible things about it. I came up the first time, though, you guys were growing sweet corn. Do you still have a garden and a patch for yourselves?
Yes, our patch has actually grown to multiple places, multiple areas, and I need to, I'm not sure thank is the right word, but need to thank you for that.
No, you don't.
So we actually plant generally between 2 to 3 patches of sweet corn, about 1 acre to a half acre in size. So about the half the size of a football field or maybe a little bigger.
That's a lot of sweet corn.
Especially if you think about each one of those patches are that size. So we're talking 2 or 3, maybe possibly even 4 football fields of sweet corn. That's a lot of sweet corn.
And you guys don't have mechanical sweet corn pickers, do you? Because you don't use combines for that stuff.
Nope. We use boys and shopping bags. Actually, the last 2 years, Ian's my oldest, and Scott, his little big brother, they've been using the sweet corn. They deliver it to the people in town and whoever's looking for some, and
nice.
They'll give them a donation for it. And so we've provided sweet corn for probably a multi-county area here for the last couple of years. So
that's sweet.
We're hoping that this year we get to get the corn in again, and usually it hasn't been a problem, but we've again been dealing with some moisture issues, so we'll have to see how that all goes.
We're dealing with moisture issues everywhere. Lots of rain down here. It feels like it rains every day. It's very gloomy. It's not the best timing in the world. It doesn't feel like right now to be in the house this much and not be able to out and go as much as I'm used to, and to sit here with the gloominess outside. You've been to my neighborhood too, though, right? Did we go to a barbecue place, or we went to O'Fallon's?
We went to a couple different barbecue places.
I have a picture of you in front of the pig.
Yes. That is one of my favorite pictures. I go back to that one frequently as my Facebook profile pic, actually.
That's funny. So, a lot of the places here are pretty meat and potatoes. That's the world I grew up in, meat and potatoes. My mom always had vegetables in the deep freeze. My parents had a small garden most years, and we bought a lot of stuff at the farmers markets. And I tell people, farmers markets when I was a kid was in the industrial part of town. It was really pretty. I don't know that my mother would have ever let me go there by myself once I turned 16, because it wasn't necessarily the nicest place. But, most of us don't have deep freezers anymore. My guess is, since you're further out of town and stuff, what do you do with all that sweet corn if you have acres of sweet corn?
To tell you the truth, my issue right now is we actually, if I were to count, I believe we've got 6 or 7 deep freezes that we have. But of course, not only do we raise beef, but in the summer during the fair season, my boys raise 4-H pigs, so they have their 4-H animals. We're also a hunting family, so we do hunting when the weather allows and timing allows. So we have a lot of space to store our own food. We have a garden that we raise what we can when we can. I enjoy canning. I enjoy preserving food and eating our own food, not necessarily just out of necessity, because the closest Walmart to me is about an hour away. So it's not like it's a drive I take every day. With the way our schedules are, I don't have time to go to the store. And with having 4 growing boys, like I said, Ian's going to be 18. Scott is 16. Just turned
Didn't he
16.
just have a birthday?
Yep, just turned 16. I forget these things after a while. Scott's almost 6'8", 240 pounds. It takes a lot to fill up those long legs of his. Evan is 13 and Eli is going to be 11. They put away a lot of food, and especially now without having school, we go through an enormous amount of food every day.
So do you still have things in your freezers from last year's garden?
Yes.
Do you store that much away?
Yes. I freeze a lot of sweet corn, throw it into a lot of different things, whether it be chili or a hot dish here or there or whatever.
Hot dish is called casserole in the rest of the world. It's a Midwestern thing or something.
Well, tater tot casserole doesn't sound the same as tater tot hot dish. I mean, tater tot hot dish sounds yummy. Tater tot casserole sounds like somebody died.
Does it have cheese and potatoes? Well,
yes, ma'am.
But you use it in a lot of different things throughout the year. Do you put tomatoes up and stuff like that? What else?
Yeah.
What else do you put up?
Salsa, tomato juice, Bloody Mary mix.
Smart woman.
Right? Winter gets cold, so it's just a whole bunch of different things. Whatever kind of tickles my fancy at the time. The boys like pickles. I'm not very good at the cucumber thing. I don't know.
Yeah.
Pickles never turn out real well.
How do you try and organize what goes in your freezers and things? Because I will tell you, I've been pretty bad about it. I do have a food saver, thing that vacuum seals things, which really helps just to have something that does part of that for me. So I can vacuum seal it. And if it's going to be in the freezer for a while, it keeps it in better shape than if I put it halfway in a baggie. And
I probably wouldn't need 5 or 6 freezers if I was better at the organizing thing. I'll just say that. But we never know.
But that's across different houses too. That's not all at your house. Is it?
Well,
it is. Maybe.
There's 3 in the shop right now, and there's 1 here in the house. So,
okay.
So we stock them pretty good. We usually raise our animals like 1 or 2 that we know we're going to put in our own freezer. But then sometimes you might have one that injures itself, breaks a leg or something, especially where we're located at when it's icy outside and things like that. You have those things. And so you have to be ready for it, because, I mean, if all of a sudden you're getting 500 pounds of meat, you can't be like, well, I'll just put it in the car overnight and hope it stays frozen. I mean, you don't have that luxury.
Yeah.
So.
No, we talked about that so briefly with Mary Beth recently, but she has a very small herd. So she only has 20 cows. So it's a little bit different than you guys have. Do you mind me asking how many cattle you have?
Right now, I think our number is 193.
Okay.
So right at 200.
A good school.
Yes. Well, and we're almost done with calving season. So our cows have all had most of them have all had their babies. So we're actually double that right now.
Yeah. And we talked a little bit about the breaking a leg and sort of the recovery process and she's a vet. So she did a great job on that. We did not talk about, when you make that decision that this one is going to have such a tough time and can't recover. Do you guys have a place nearby that actually does like the preparation on the meat for you? Like all the kind of cutting and putting it into steak versus...
We don't do any of that ourselves. We take it all there's a butcher shop about 30 miles from here that we've worked with for many years that does a great job for us. We would take the animal in, they take care of everything for us. We just tell them what it is we want, how we want the cuts to look, much as what like you would do going to your local butcher at your supermarket, whatever, except for we just know
you're going to have 500 pounds of it.
Right. And we know exactly where that animal came from. And we know that what we took in is what we're getting back. And so it just makes it a little easier for us, I think, to be prepared for it because we do know what we're going to have room for.
Yeah.
And so the cost maybe for us, it's not as much as buying it directly from the store, but it's still a larger upfront cost because you're paying for the processing of a whole animal, not just the
not just the steaks or the the ground beef that you're getting. And I think a few of our friends actually sell like quarters or halves, and I know there's a few places, Spring Valley Farms around Memphis does that, where they call it freezer beef usually because not many people are going to eat a quarter or a half a cow all at once. You can put some in the freezer.
Definitely. Well, and there's a lot of people have like some very particular tastes when it comes to their cuts of meat. And so some people don't prefer a beef roast, but they want more steaks cut, or maybe they want it all turned into hamburger or whatever it may be. So for those people who do more of the local selling directly to the people in their communities, you have to be a little more, particular about how you set that up, because kind of like when you have a pig, everybody would like a pig to be 100% bacon, but that's not possible. So you have to kind of...
I had a really good pork steak the other day too, but I would say I would like a lot more bacon than just the belly.
Right. Unfortunately, that's a conversation we have to have with the creator sometime as to why'd you make the belly of the pig taste so good, but it's not that big of an area.
So you work with a processor. The same person also do hunting? Can they dress out a deer for you or something if you...
Yep.
So a lot of people have never taken an animal to a processor and thought about how to get that done. I am lucky, I guess, in that my father liked to go hunting and my brother still does a lot of that kind of stuff. I hear it, even though I don't personally typically have a full cow coming into my freezer. That just seems a lot.
You could get a full cow and then I could hold whatever, you didn't completely use, and we can work out a trade system.
Well, right now, I think there's been such a rush on deep freezes. I don't know that I'm going to get one anytime soon. So we're talking about the cattle that you guys have. And I know you guys have some great pastures. And I've got pictures from so many visits of going out and beautiful area and getting to help work cattle. Even some with my niece, we were given the vaccines to the new calves from the fall.
Yep.
So you guys focus a lot on herd health, I would assume?
Yes, herd health is extremely important to us. We have in our farm what's called a closed herd. So my husband likes to joke about the only new females brought to our farm was my mother-in-law and myself. Everybody else
just like Mark.
Right? Exactly. He has a way with words. He's so romantic like that. For us, it's very important that our cows are healthy, because although we sell the calves at the first part of the year from the year before, they stay here for about 11 months before we sell them. We don't buy any cows to build up our herds. Anything that we keep here has been born here. So the only new blood that comes into our herd are the bulls that we use. And even then, we use a lot of artificial insemination so that we can be very selective as far as bloodlines and things like that, because when you have a closed herd, you want to make sure you don't have any issues with genetics and things being too closely related. So we keep very close records on, what cow was born from the sire and the male and the female, the mom and the dad for them, and all of that. But it's super important for us for our cows to be healthy, because that we're looking at the future of our farm. So what we do today, what we're raising today, we're hoping is the herd for our boys.
And when I first met you, you talk a lot about how to keep your herd and your farm for your boys. Like any of them who want to farm.
And I think right now it's looking like at least 2 are interested in coming back to farm. And so we want to do whatever we can to make sure that we've set them up in a place that they're as blessed with as many opportunities as Mark and I have been. And so one of the ways we do that when you're looking at that herd health is making sure that we are following, our veterinarian's advice, proper techniques, making sure that we're checking on them all the time. We're very involved in their care. Everything is very hands-on for us. And although it makes it a lot of work when you're looking at your future every day like that and seeing it through the eyes of these boys who are excited and interested in doing that, it doesn't make it seem like work at all.
Well, I remember when I've been there in the fall, the cattle are pretty far away. Miles, not like 30 miles or anything, but you guys bring the cows that are going to be calving and stuff. You bring the herd up closer to the house for calving season, right?
Yes. So our calendar generally looks like, at the beginning of the year in January, everything's right near the farm here, near our house. Usually we start calving about the second week of February. So everything is here until usually around the end of May is when we move things out to pasture. The pasture is about 17 miles from here. So we haul everything out. We used to trail them out and trail them back home, but it takes a lot of work to get them to go that far. And in the spring, it's not so bad. But in the fall, when the corn is growing and things like that,
it's easy to lose one, I would bet.
Oh, it's easy to lose the whole herd. So,
I love it.
And then they stay out to pasture. We have a couple 100 acres of grass that they can eat on warm season and cool season grasses. So that means that the grasses ripen at different times, so that there's a whole bunch of variety of things for them to eat out there. And we have water tanks that they can drink from, and we rotate them around so that the grass can recover and different things like that. But our hope is to not have to bring them back home until September or October, depending on what you have to deal with Mother Nature there. So it all kind of depends on what she decides is going to happen that year. But we leave them out to pasture for as long as we can, bring them back home, graze them on some of the stocks that we've harvested. If, unlike this year, there wasn't a whole lot of grazing being done because we weren't done with harvest until Christmas.
Talk about this past year, because the spring was horrible last year, right? Like 2019, it was flooding that was so severe.
We had the wettest spring, summer, fall on record ever. We had people who couldn't remember it ever being like this, where generally we may have a wet spring, but then you end up with this dry patch in the summer where everything dries out pretty well and it gets pretty hot real quickly. And then you may end up with some moisture again in the fall, but there was never really a break. I think the longest we went was maybe 4 or 5 days without rain.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just like a nice slow rain. It was like the deluge of just tons of rain and a lot of destruction, a lot of washouts. We had roads that needed repairing, places you couldn't get to because everything was just so wet.
Yeah.
I remember graduation last year. We had people who couldn't get to different graduation receptions because they didn't have 4-wheel drive vehicles, and it was
people were cut off. I remember some people using boats to try and go in and get to things, and the Army Corps of Engineers going out in Nebraska because you had levees blowing. And
yeah, definitely.
It's a really crazy year. And here's what's interesting is that didn't result in any food shortages. And now this year, we're in a very unique spot in grocery stores where it feels like, for many of us, it feels like there's a food shortage. There's definitely a toilet paper shortage. Everybody agrees on that one.
With having a house of 4 boys. Don't even get me started on the whole toilet paper thing, because I don't even understand how this ever became a thing. It baffles me.
I haven't been shopping in probably almost a month now in terms of groceries or anything. For a couple of weeks, it's because I was traveling. Now that there's the issue with the coronavirus, I'm susceptible to respiratory issues because I have asthma, right? So I have these lovely people from services like Instacart who shop for me. And dear friends call me on the regular to say, hey, we're going out today, and do you need something? My sister couldn't find flour, right? She loves her sourdough. She's got the starter from forever. She feeds it. She loves fresh baked bread, and she makes incredible breads. I'm telling you. But she couldn't find any flour for over a week in Memphis, right? And we're not from a world where you normally see things that are out. Other friends can't find rice. I keep rice. I always have rice. In today's world, people are suddenly looking for things that are missing. We have a food system that channels foods into different places. So some of that food, it's still coming off of farms, whether it's yours or somebody else's, and it's getting in the system, but it may be channeled off right now for cafeterias and food service or restaurant. So to me, I wonder how much of it is it's just in the wrong places. But a lot of people are really nervous.
And that's one thing I have to say, living on the farm, I guess my biggest frustration with the shortages that we're seeing is that I know that, it is that delivery of food that must be the issue, because it's not the availability. We're still raising, cattle for beef. There shouldn't be a shortage. We still have crops that are waiting to be sold, that are in storage. Mm-hmm. We have all of these things. There is nothing that shouldn't be available to us, because it's all readily here. So I work in the town of Ellendale. It's 15 miles south of us here. Again, a very rural community. The coronavirus issue is just kind of ramping up here in North Dakota. We're really kind of far behind when it comes to curve that they talk about and everything else. We're just on the beginning side of things.
The places that have been hotspots are places that have large populations from affected areas coming in on a regular basis. So I know most of my flights to Asia have gone through Seattle, San Francisco, LA. I know most of my flights to Italy go through New York or Atlanta, right? So it's easy to see that something that was novel and that's mainly been introduced to the U.S. through travel wouldn't get to North Dakota immediately, because as we discussed on the front end, lots of people still have you on their yet to visit list.
And it's times like this, I'm okay with that. You can put off your visit for a few more weeks, months, whatever it may be.
Introverts are all okay with that too. Yeah. But I think
the crazy thing is that even our shelves, the toilet paper is gone, the food is gone. And I can guarantee you that we have no more people in our community than we did before. But we now have this ramped up, all of these people who now are fearing that there's going to be a shortage. So they're creating a shortage.
Yeah.
Because
panic does that. Part of that is I think a lot of us have not been planners when it comes to our food. And we have not figured out what should you always have on hand at home so that you can tide yourself over. If a big storm came, it's just like snow. Every time the freaking snowstorms hit, right? Everybody goes out and they buy the same things. And I think this is a little bit like that. People weren't sure, and suddenly they have children home from school. I mean, suddenly you have 4 boys home from school all day, every day. And in school, they have specific times they're allowed to eat lunch. And they go there and they do that. And you don't have to worry about buying all that food for most of us. You at least have the option of letting that be taken care of at school.
Definitely. And I do. I am a proponent of using the school lunch. It's a great way, especially in North Dakota when it's cold here, a great portion of the school year. I believe that it's important for those kids to have a hot meal halfway through that day. Because they've spent, the younger kids spend time outside at recess because, and this is going to probably be a shock to you, but unless the wind chill is -10 or below,
Jesus.
the kids go outside for recess. So, right? You're
Now you remember my first visit to North Dakota in the winter, right?
the number of layers that you had on just to go outside.
So of course your kids stay outside until, it's that cold. Fresh air is a good thing. So I agree.
And
But
the air is very fresh at that temperature. Very fresh.
very fresh, very crisp, I would assume. Well, I think it's interesting that you have that focus then on a hot meal. That makes a lot of sense. And comfort meals, I would think would go good.
And so with all of this, we planned the same way as far as making sure that our pantry has the non-perishables is the important thing, because you can only plan so far ahead with your milk and things like that, because it has a shelf life. But your things like your chips and your even your bread, things like that, you can either put in your freezer or put in the fridge, just to make sure that you have enough to get you through. It goes a long way just to make sure that, like where we live, you're not always guaranteed you're going to have a trip to town. And so we make sure that you have enough to get you through a week or two, that you can be comfortable and not be missing out on anything. But the big thing is that making sure that not only do you have some of the staples, but for me, the key is to make sure you have a few things that you've put away that makes the day a little brighter, and it doesn't have to necessarily be just, maybe it's some hot chocolate, or maybe it's popcorn or something that.
The other day I called my mom. She's at home all day, every day, just like the rest of us, right? And I said something, and she goes, "Well, I'm going to tell you, I made brownies."
Yes.
She was so proud of herself. And then she told me she ate them all. I was like in shock. But I will say, like I actually ordered just a couple of frozen pizzas. And today I just didn't feel like cooking, right? So
right.
They were stored away. It's fine. I'm not going to get a bunch of them. But, it was nice. Also have little things that are quick and easy to make and stuff like that makes a big difference. So for your pantry, what kinds of things do you have that you keep as your go-to? Because for me, I have things like red beans and rice. I love dried beans of all kinds, but red beans and rice, because I can also buy those kinds of sausages that I can keep on hand for probably months if I wanted to, right? Like as long as I haven't opened the packaging, they're already smoked and all that kind of stuff. So they really have a nice long shelf life, much less if I froze them.
Right. I will tell you that my go-tos are always mac and cheese, because my boys are connoisseurs of mac and cheese. Noodles, a variety of different noodles, because it's amazing just changing the shape of a noodle. You may make the same dish, but if it's a different shape of noodle, the boys will swear it tastes different.
I had tortellini yesterday. I totally agree.
Yeah, so that's a win. I just change which noodle I use, and it's a completely different dish. Pasta sauce, different varieties of pasta sauce, whatever it may be. I always have a ton of pasta sauce. I have a ton of beans on hand as well, so I can always throw together a batch of chili or whatever it may be. Mm-hmm. Chips, we do a lot of chips, because I may make some different dips or different things like that, tide them over, especially when, right now, at school, they're used to eating here at 7:00 when they get up, they have breakfast. Then at school, they eat at 11:20, and then they eat after school, and then they have supper. Well, now they eat from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., and then they have a bedtime snack before they go to bed. So it's just the amount of food that they consume right now. It's just, I can't even.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people are doing that too, right? Like comfort foods, especially for, I found myself making a dip I haven't made in probably a couple of years even, right? Like, it's like, I do not need that. Oh, but I do.
Right.
It makes me happy. And you have additional layers of interesting food issues at your house, right? So you have a son that can't necessarily eat everything that the rest of your crowd eats.
So Eli has a metabolic condition where his body doesn't break down protein the way everybody else's does. And so he has to follow a pretty strict diet of limiting protein. And as we all know, protein is a major building block of all life. And so there is protein in literally just about everything except for junk food, like, which for him is a win-win, because then he can eat all the junk food in the world that he wants to, and it's a free food for him. But I have to limit things like milk and cheese and bread and pastas and, of course, any sort of meat. Having to have things on hand for both ends of the spectrum makes it very interesting, because, I'll have to say, Eli, you can only have like a half a serving of lasagna. Ian, you can't eat the last chocolate chip cookie because that's for Eli. Like, it's just old backwards. Like,
that's so interesting, because for so many in America, we've gotten to where we really pay attention to protein intake. Some of us get too much, right? But a lot of us had gotten to where we ate carbs for breakfast and then kind of went, oh, maybe that lack of protein in the morning is a bit of an issue for me. Maybe it would be better if I had some protein, and kind of power you on. But Eli doesn't have that opportunity to eat quite as much protein, so he has to do things a little bit differently.
Definitely. And it makes it interesting because I have to make all of my recipes kind of in a way that we can adjust them, because I don't have the time to cook 24/7, and so I make meals.
Yeah, you work a town job too.
I do work a town job, and I do, again, with having boys that are busy in sports and athletics, we have to make sure we have things that can be ready on the go. I think with this whole coronavirus and the shelter in place and all of these things, that was the hardest part. Was we're just on the back end of basketball season. In fact, our state basketball tournament was postponed due to everything going on around the country. And so we had been traveling nonstop for the last 5 weeks. Hadn't been home probably 2 nights in a row that whole time. We were just getting to the point where I was going to need to do a great big shopping trip to replenish everything when all of this happened. And it was kind of like, you go in and you realize somebody already beat me to it. There's nothing left here. And it was crazy, because trying to find all of these different things to restock my shelves, and it made me really realize that I can't let it get to that point again, even if I have to, as I'm leaving town, whatever, make sure that I am stocked up, because it is difficult when you have a larger family to make sure that you get what you need when everybody else is in that panic mode. So
and I think that's where I think a lot of people felt that this last week or two, especially because they didn't know how much they would need at home with everybody at home, right? Like, it's a new normal for most of us, right? We never had to do this before. And I think now we ought to start looking, at least from my perspective, is how can we, and I would say both from people like me off of the farm and people like you on the farm, help instill a little bit more resiliency, like in our homes. Are there different things that we could do to kind of help make that go along? For me, one of the things that I did, you can order food from different farms and have it shipped to you directly, right?
Right.
I got a box of 12 avocados from my friend Mimi's farm in California. Now, granted, it's important that you can also freeze avocados, because 12 avocados, they're all going to ripen similarly close in time. And I can only eat so much avocado toast. I mean, I did eat it quite a bit there for a while, but I finally put some of them in the freezer. But I think, how to make sure that I don't get my house out of order again. And I hope grocery stores and others in the food system are also thinking about this, right? So granted, today I'm packaging things and sending it into this, kind of food service side for cafeterias and da. I think a lot of us are going to be looking at how do we be more flexible if this kind of thing ever happens again, because we've never had it happen. My mom says never seen anything like it, right?
Right.
And in her 80s, I'm going to take her word. And she lived through the Depression. She lived through all kinds of things, right? But this is such a weird kind of instance. I think now I at least feel like I need to slow down. Take some deep breaths. Stop panic buying, right?
Right. Please.
So I've been in home quarantine of sorts for more than 2 weeks now. I've already been using Instacart for a long time. And so I already had nice big groceries and thinking, but I've also had some groceries where they go, no, you can't get ground beef. No, you can't get chicken. You can't. Ooh, wait a minute.
Well, two things. One, we have to remember that even in the shelter in places and things like that, our truckers have done an amazing job of making sure that those products are being moved around our country, even when the rest of us aren't moving.
Yeah.
And they're putting themselves at risk too. And I realize that, and I appreciate everything they do. But we don't have a lack of ability to get these items. Like we're creating our own shortage. There isn't a shortage.
Yeah.
We just have to be patient.
Yeah.
And, a grocery store like mine, there's only so much space that they have. They can't.
So now are you talking about the grocery store in Ellendale, or are you talking
Ellendale.
about okay.
Well, because when we do our big shopping trips, when we go and get, like the lots of items, if we go down to Aberdeen or Jamestown's in North Dakota, Aberdeen is in South Dakota. They're both an hour away from here. Generally, I save those. I may do those shopping trips once or twice a year. I do a lot, as much as I can locally, just because price-wise, it's comparable when you're talking about the amount of time you save and things like that. And I prefer to have that just to support.
The option is nice to even have it. Yeah.
And when you go through the amount of food we go through, I mean, I don't ever intend to have milk cows, and we go through a lot of milk. So I need to have it, as local as possible as far as being able to pick it up. So I love the fact that there's a store in town 15 miles from here where I can go in and pick a couple gallons of milk up. So when I go into town and there's no milk there, and I think, what happened here? Because, I know how much the store can hold. And it's not that they didn't get their shipment in. It's not that the supplies aren't moving. The supplies are moving. We're just really, and I understand the panic, having somebody in my household that I have to protect. I get that as well. But especially these items that have, a limited shelf life, things like that. It kind of makes me scratch my head a little bit. But there are ways that you can, mitigate that in a way, as far as making sure that you have accessibility to local farms. Someone like me who has a couple freezers full of beef, things like that, there's always people who are willing to share with what they have, or you can purchase a half a beef or a quarter of beef or whatever it may be from them. When we do that, when we offer any of our beef to neighbors or friends or whatever, maybe we just drop it off at the butcher shop. They take it from there. Because I want to make sure that they have that direct communication with the butcher, so they get what they're looking for as far as cuts and all of that goes. And so there are a lot of places where you can do that. And again, there are a lot of places where, what we get is all USDA inspected. It, passes all certifications and all things like that. It's all done in a licensed facility, and all of that. So every community that has agriculture near it.
I was going to say, I know people with cattle all around St. Louis on different sides of it, right? Somebody actually asked me the other day, did I have a source for my beef? And, I usually just get it through the grocery store, and that's fine with me. I have occasionally gotten it directly from friends. But for people who are trying to decide differently about their homes, this is a great time to think about that. Like, do you want to get some beef locally and just have more on hand? The risk is if the freezer goes out, you suddenly have to eat a lot of beef, or you have to get a new one really fast. But I think a lot of people are going to be thinking about those. And I think the more farmers who are willing to think about, well, somebody wanted to buy one from me, it's okay. I think the question is, you have to have them fed out to that point, right? So not everybody has steers that are raised and ready for the market, or,
right.
And it depends on what you're raising and what you're doing and stuff. But usually if you talk to a farmer in your area, or heck, if people really want to know, here's how to get it, they can just leave a note on the website, Grounded by the Farm. There's a contact form there. Help me understand where you are, and I'll try and find a few farmers in that area. I know a lot of farmers.
Definitely. Well, and like for us, we don't do the majority of our marketing that way, because one, it's a very, hot and cold, up and down, and we need someplace where we know, when they're ready to go to market, they're ready to go to market, and so we need to make sure we have that stability. And then the other thing is that, when somebody does want a half a beef or a quarter of beef, that doesn't mean that there's one ready today, so maybe that's great. We'll have one ready for you in June, so that you can have those conversations, so that you can plan around it and make sure that you have, it takes time to make sure that beef is ready, so that it's the taste and texture and everything is we're all about food experiences. And as a farmer, I just want to make sure that whatever you get from our farm truly leaves a good taste in your mouth for our farm. Like that, I want to make sure that you get done eating that night and you have a smile on your face and your stomach is full and you are grateful to have that experience.
Yeah.
And so, it takes time to get it to that point. So we want to make sure that everything is done right, and that you don't cut any corners just to make sure that you hit a certain time frame.
Wow, what a strong note to end on. Before I let you go, do you want to tell people how to find you online? Or
you can find me online. Wagon Tales is the blog that I used to write, and I'm getting back into it again. You can find me at Wag Farms on Twitter, Val Wagner on Facebook. I enjoy talking to anybody about agriculture and what we do here, and what the future of agriculture may look like. I'm looking forward to seeing the world that my boys leave for the next generation as well.
I'll make sure I put all that in the show notes and on the blog post. We talked about so many things that I've got links for and stuff. So we'll have some photos and videos and stuff like that up on the website, hopefully. But gosh, thanks for taking time out. I really do appreciate it, Val.
Hey, anytime.
As you probably could tell, Val and I could visit all day, all night. And actually, after we cut off the recorder, a couple of her boys and Mark came in, said hi. Was really nice catching up with them. Hope you guys were interested and enjoyed this segment. It is a little bit different. Instead of talking about a specific food that's raised on the farm, but talking more about how they look at feeding a household and storage and some of those things. Looking at the next month or so, I've got a few things going on. So a friend of mine has a community garden in Chicago, and we're going to be talking about gardening coming up, just based on the fact that I think a lot more of us are going to be closer to home this summer than usual. A garden may be an interesting thing to do. It's a heck of a lesson sometimes. The other things that I've been talking to a few farmers, rice and avocados. So we'll see what we can get figured out on schedules with each of those, and hopefully have those here for you in the near future. I'd love to hear from you if you have ideas, and would really appreciate your passing along this episode if you think some of your friends and family would enjoy it. Seems Facebook's a lot more positive. Maybe share it even on Facebook as more people are thinking about the recipes they may want to make. I've got some great links along that line coming up with this show, and I hope you and your family stay healthy, take care, and we'll see you back here in the near future. Thank you.